My name is Clara Hayes. I'm 35 years old, and I'm a corporate acquisition specialist. I stood in the polished, silent boardroom of Thorne Co, the scent of lemon polish and old paper filling the air. The mahogany table gleamed under the recessed lights, reflecting my own calm, expectant face. My legal team had just finished the final paperwork, effectively making me the owner of this company, a company that had once been my stepmother's entire world. A soft knock preceded the door opening, and Evelyn Thorne swept in, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her tailored suit crisp. She was still a striking woman, even at 62, though the lines of stress around her eyes were deeper than I remembered. She smiled, a practiced, professional smile, as her gaze swept over the room, settling briefly on me before moving on. She didn't recognize me. Not a flicker of recognition in those sharp, blue eyes. She thought I was just part of the legal team, perhaps a junior associate. My chest tightened, a strange mix of vindication and a quiet, almost sad, anticipation. She had no idea who I was, and in a few moments, that was about to change in a way neither of us could have predicted. This wasn't just a business transaction, it was the closing of a very old, very painful chapter. To understand why this moment felt so profoundly significant, you need to know about the Thorne Company. Clara Thorne was before Clara Hayes. My father married Evelyn when I was 12. He was a kind, gentle man, a local architect, and Evelyn was his polar opposite, ambitious, driven, and utterly consumed by her burgeoning home goods company. Thorne Company wasn't a huge conglomerate, but it was her passion, her identity. She had started it from scratch, selling handcrafted ceramics and linens, and had grown it into a respected regional brand known for its classic, understated elegance. From the moment Evelyn moved into our comfortable suburban home, I felt like an unwelcome accessory. She had no children of her own, and she made it clear that she had no interest in acquiring one. My presence was, at best, an inconvenience. She never learned my favorite color, never asked about my school projects, and rarely used my actual name. I was always your father's daughter or the girl. Her office at home, a pristine sanctuary filled with samples of her latest collections, felt like a museum. In one corner, near a tall, perfectly pruned ficus tree, she kept a small, locked cabinet where she filed away company documents. That ficus tree, with its glossy, unmoving leaves, always felt like a symbol of Evelyn herself, outwardly perfect, but utterly devoid of warmth. My father tried to bridge the gap, but Evelyn's priorities were always clear. Dinners were often interrupted by her phone calls with suppliers or designers. Weekends were spent at trade shows or in her office. I remember one evening, I'd won an award for a short story I'd written, and I burst into the living room, eager to share. Evelyn was on the phone, sketching designs on a notepad. She held up a hand, shushing me, then continued her conversation for another 20 minutes. When she finally hung up, she glanced at my certificate, gave a tight smile, and said, "That's nice, dear. Now, about the new line of throws, I think we need to rethink the texture." The award was never mentioned again. It was a pattern that repeated itself throughout my teenage years. My achievements, my feelings, my very existence, were always secondary to Thorne Company. When I was 18, just starting college, my father passed away unexpectedly after a sudden illness. It was devastating. Evelyn, surprisingly, handled the funeral arrangements with efficiency, but her grief seemed more about losing a stable partner than a deep emotional bond. Within 6 months, she sold our family home, citing the need for a fresh start and a smaller place closer to her company headquarters. She gave me a check, a substantial one, from my father's life insurance, and a terse goodbye. "You're a grown woman now, Clara," she'd said, her eyes already distant. "You have your own path. I have mine." She never called, never wrote. I was free, but also utterly alone, adrift. That feeling of being unseen, of being dismissed, fueled me. I threw myself into my studies, majoring in finance and economics. I excelled, driven by a fierce desire to build a life where I was not only visible but indispensable. I took on internships in investment banking, then landed a coveted position at a mergers and acquisitions firm right out of business school. My professional name became Clara Hayes, using my mother's maiden name. It felt like shedding an old skin, leaving behind the Clara Thorne who was always your father's daughter. I honed my skills, learning the intricate dance of valuation, negotiation, and strategic acquisition. I developed a reputation for being meticulous, sharp, and utterly relentless when I believed in a deal. Years passed. I built a successful career, moving up the ranks, handling multi-million-dollar deals. I rarely thought about Evelyn or Thorne Company, except for a fleeting memory now and then. Then, about a year ago, I started hearing whispers in the industry. Thorne Company was struggling. Its classic designs, once its strength, were now seen as dated. Evelyn, notoriously resistant to change, had failed to adapt to e-commerce trends or the rise of younger, trendier brands. Her supply chain was inefficient, her marketing budget stagnant, and her employee turnover was climbing. A rival, a large national retailer called Homestead Goods, was reportedly sniffing around, looking for a bargain acquisition to absorb Thorne Company's remaining market share and customer base. The news hit me differently than I expected. It wasn't just another company on the block. It was her company. The one that had always come first. An idea, audacious and a little chilling, began to form in my mind. I started doing some discreet research, just out of curiosity at first. The numbers confirmed the rumors. Thorne Company was indeed in a precarious position, bleeding money, its valuation plummeting. Evelyn, it seemed, had run her empire into the ground, too proud or too blind to see the inevitable. That was when the numbers stopped looking accidental. This wasn't just a struggling business, it was an opportunity, a very personal one. I realized I could acquire Thorne Company. Not just for the business challenge, not just for the potential turnaround, but for something deeper. It was a chance to finally be seen, not as your father's daughter, but as the force capable of taking the very thing she valued above all else. It was a chance to reclaim a piece of my past, to rewrite the narrative. I decided then and there, I would buy Thorne Company. The preparation was intense. I couldn't risk Evelyn discovering my identity too early, which would undoubtedly complicate or even derail the acquisition. I worked through a series of shell companies and a trusted network of intermediaries. My team, none of whom knew the personal connection, handled the initial outreach and negotiations. I remained in the background, a silent, anonymous force. We dove deep into Thorne Company's financials, uncovering layers of mismanagement, outdated inventory systems, and a general lack of strategic foresight. The company was a mess, but it had a loyal customer base and a strong brand history, a diamond in the rough, if polished correctly. I secured the necessary financing, leveraging my firm's resources and my own investment portfolio. The negotiations with Evelyn's legal and financial advisors were protracted and often frustrating. She clung to an inflated valuation, convinced her company was worth far more than the market dictated. It was clear she was in denial, unwilling to face the reality of her failing business. We had to be firm, presenting irrefutable data on declining sales, increasing debt, and the imminent threat of liquidation if she didn't sell. Finally, after months of back and forth, she capitulated, agreeing to our offer, which was significantly lower than her initial demands. The deal was done. All that remained was the formal closing, the transfer of ownership, and the introduction of the new owner. Which brought me to this moment, standing in the Thorne Company boardroom, watching Evelyn Thorne enter, completely oblivious. She walked past me without a second glance, her eyes fixed on my lead counsel, Mr. Davies, an older gentleman known for his gravitas. "Mr. Davies," she said, extending a hand, "thank you for coming. I assume the new owner will be joining us shortly?" Mr. Davies smiled politely. "Miss Thorne, the new owner is already here." He gestured subtly towards me. Evelyn turned, a slight frown creasing her brow. She looked at me again, a flicker of polite confusion, then dismissed me with a shrug. "Oh, I see. And who might you be, dear?" Her tone was condescending, the same dismissive way she used to speak to me when I was a child. I took a slow, deliberate breath, letting the moment hang in the air. My heart was pounding, but my voice was steady, calm. "Evelyn," I said, stepping forward. "It's Clara. Clara Hayes, professionally." But you probably knew me as Clara Thorne. Her face, so composed a moment before, crumpled. Her eyes, which had been so quick to dismiss me, now widened in disbelief, then shock. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving them ashen. Her mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. She took an involuntary step back, bumping into the boardroom table. It was clear she was trying to process it, trying to reconcile the awkward, invisible teenager she remembered with the poised, professional woman standing before her. The transformation was complete, and she had truly, utterly, had no idea. "Clara," she finally whispered, the name a question, laced with horror. Is that really you?" "It is," I confirmed, my voice unwavering. "N.D. as Mr. Davies indicated, I am the new owner of Thorne Company." The silence in the room was deafening. Evelyn stared at me, her eyes darting from my face to Mr. Davies, as if seeking confirmation that this was some cruel joke. Then, the shock gave way to a surge of anger. You bought my company? This is an outrage. A betrayal." I met her gaze evenly. "Evelyn, this was a legitimate business transaction. Thorne Company was failing. You were unwilling to adapt. My team and I presented a fair offer, which you accepted. I'm here to revitalize this company, to bring it into the modern era, something you clearly couldn't or wouldn't do." She tried to argue, to demand explanations, to accuse me of malice. But her words were hollow, lacking any real power. The truth of the situation was undeniable. She had signed the papers. She had agreed to the terms. She had, quite literally, sold her legacy to the girl she had once deemed insignificant. Mr. Davies stepped in, calmly reiterating the legalities, confirming that Evelyn's role as CEO was terminated, effective immediately, though a generous severance package had been included. Over the next few weeks, the transition was challenging but ultimately rewarding. Evelyn left with a bitter, resentful silence, refusing to engage further. Many of the long-term employees, initially wary of a new owner, were surprisingly relieved. They had seen the company decline under Evelyn's stagnant leadership and welcomed the promise of change. I moved into Evelyn's old corner office, the one she had always guarded so jealously. The first thing I did was clear out the clutter, the outdated files, and the stale air of neglect. The ficus tree was still there, in the corner. Its leaves were a little dusty, a few yellowed with age. It stood exactly where it always had, a silent sentinel. I looked at it, no longer with the childhood sense of being excluded, but with a quiet understanding. It was just a plant, after all, a living thing that needed care and attention to thrive. Just like a company. Just like a person. I walked over to it, picked up a damp cloth, and carefully wiped the dust from its glossy leaves. It was still a ficus, in the same corner, but now, it was in my office, in my company, and it felt like it finally had room to breathe.